Hi everybody. Today we're going to talk a bit about how you can set up Blackboard test in your Blackboard course site. Now with Blackboard tests, this is actually a multi-stage process. The first step is to create the test. The second step is to deploy the test. And the third step is to grade the test. In this session, we're going to have a look at how you can create that test in the first place. So to build a test in Blackboard, you're going to want to start in one of your Blackboard courses. So if you go into a course site, then you scroll down, you're going to see under this course management panel over here to the bottom left that you've got an option called Course Tools. Click on Course Tools, and that's going to open out some other options for you. If you go a little bit further down, you're going to see that there's an option there down towards the bottom of the list called Tests, Surveys, and Pools. If you click on that, it's going to open up a few more options for you. If you're creating a test in Blackboard, the option that you want is very conveniently titled Tests. So click on that, and that's going to pull up a list of any tests that you have in your Blackboard course. Now in this case we don't have any, so there's nothing on that list, but you'll see that we do have at the top left of the screen this option to build a test. If you click on that, Blackboard's going to want a bit of information from you. So the one thing it does absolutely need is a name. So I will call this sample test because that's what it is. You can choose at this point that you can put in some description or some instructions if you want, but you certainly don't have to. The one thing it does need though is that name. So if you've got the name in there, you can come down here to the bottom of the page and click on Submit. Once I've clicked on Submit, this takes me through to what Blackboard calls the test canvas. The test canvas is where you're actually going to start building out questions. Now, Blackboard tests offer 17 different question types, and of those 17 different question types, 14 of them auto-grade by the system, so you won't have to worry about those. For the sake of this video, we're only going to be looking at 4 types of questions, 4 of the most commonly used types of questions, and also 4 of the most straightforward in terms of working with your students. The first type of question we're going to have a look at is true-false. This is a really commonly used type of test question. It's also one that is one of the most straightforward to set up. So if you're on the test canvas, you're going to go up to the top left of your screen here where there's an option called Create Question. These are all of the question types that Blackboard makes available. If you go down the list, you'll see right down at the bottom there that there's an option called True-False. Click on that, and that will pull up the interface that you can use to create that question. So there is some information here that Blackboard wants from you. It's not necessary to give it a question title, which is the first option at the top of the screen, but it does need a question text. So let's go with something fairly straightforward and say, the sky is red. You don't really have a lot of options with this question. You can change the answer orientation if you feel so inclined, but it's not necessary. The only thing that you really have to do here is tell it whether the answer that you've put there is true or false. So in this case, the sky is clearly not red, so we're going to indicate that false is the correct answer. And most of the rest of the options here for things like feedback, categories, and keywords and instructor notes, you really don't have to bother with. So if you click on Submit, that is going to create your question and take you back to the test canvas. The second kind of question we're going to have a look at is multiple choice. So on the test canvas, if you scroll back up to the top and go back to Create Question, you'll find an option called Multiple Choice. If you click on that, it will open the multiple choice interface. So the same as with the true-false questions, you don't actually need to put a question title here. You do, however, need to write the question text in the box. So here, let's go with a question where we ask, what color is the sky? So if we scroll down a little bit here, you'll find that there are some options. Generally speaking, you probably don't have to worry about these. You don't need answer numbering, it will put that in automatically. You don't really need to change the answer orientation, and in most cases you probably don't want partial credit for a multiple choice question. You may, if you want, select to show your answers in random order. However, one place that this doesn't work is if you're doing questions that have options like D, all of the above in them. Because those options will get reordered, those all of the above or C and D type options are the kind of things that aren't going to be in the right place anymore, so those questions can't be randomized. The other thing you have to do for multiple choice questions is to put in the answers. So the default in Blackboard is that you get 4 answer slots. You can change that if you want. If you click on the drop down, you can put in more if you need them, or if you need to remove ones that are already there, you've got a remove button. So with Blackboard multiple choice, you do have to put each possible answer into its own box. So in this case, we're looking for the color of the sky. So let's say that we put in red as the first answer, yellow as the second answer, blue as the third answer, and green as the fourth. So I've put all of my answers in there. And the one thing I do have left to do is to tell Blackboard what the right answer is. To do that, I'm just going to click the radio button next to the answer that's correct. In this case, that's answer 3. Beyond that, you probably don't have to worry about most of the other options. Again, we've got options for feedback, we've got categories and keywords, we've got instructor notes. You can ignore those on most of these questions and just come down and click on Submit again. So you can see we're back at the test canvas, and we can see that our multiple choice question has been added onto the list of questions in our text. The third type of question we're going to have a look at is short answer. Now, short answer is one of those question types that the system actually can't auto-grade because it doesn't usually have a definite answer associated with it. However, it can be a useful question type for asking students to explain or describe something. To set up a short answer question, you're going to come up here to create question once again. This time you're going to choose short answer. Once again, you don't have to worry about a question title, but you will need a question text. So in this case, let's ask something that would require some description. So let's say, describe 3 reasons why the sky is blue. And in the case of this question, that's pretty much all you need. Most of the rest of the options here you can just leave alone. If you come down and click on Submit, that's going to take us back to the test canvas once more. The final type of question we'll have a look at today is the essay question. As with the short answer question, this is one of those question types that Blackboard can't actually grade for you. But it's a good way to let students have a fair amount of space to really think through and write about a particular thing that's relevant to their course. So to create an essay question, you're going to come back up to create question one more time, and this time select essay. Again, you could ignore the question title, but you will need some question text. In this case, let's go with explain why it's important that the sky is blue. Once again, you can ignore most of the options that happen down below, particularly around some of these settings. In the case of this question and the short answer question, you may notice that there is a sample answer that you can provide students to give them an example of what a correct answer might look like. In my experience, this never actually shows up, and in most cases, it works fine without students having that sample answer, so you can just leave that one alone, along with the standard sort of options around things like categories and keywords and instructor notes. So if you click on Submit, that will take us back to the test canvas once again. The final thing to note about setting up tests in Blackboard is that our Blackboard defaults to 10 points per question for the point values. You can see those over here on the right-hand side. If you've already set up your questions, you can manually change those by clicking into that box, changing the value, and then clicking on Submit. If you are thinking about doing quite a lot of questions, though, you can actually change the default from the outset. It won't apply to questions that have already been made, but it will apply to new ones that you're creating. So to do that, if you come up to the top right of the screen here, you've got an option called Question Settings. Click on that. Then if you go a little ways down the page, you can change the default point value. So if you're doing a lot of, say, multiple choice and true-false, you might want something like 1 point per question. And if you click on Submit, that will take effect and apply to any questions going forward. Once you're done with all of that, the final thing you can do is come down to the bottom of your test canvas and click on OK. This will close out the test, and then you should see your brand new created test sitting in the list of tests under your tests area.